Good morning. Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, or are here with us this morning for the first time, we're glad you're here. I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, Chalice's minister. Our worship musician this morning is our music director, Tim McKnight. Welcome to this online worship service. Welcome to those of you watching live Sunday morning using Zoom, and welcome to those of you who are watching the recording of this service later on Chalice's YouTube channel. For those of us using Zoom, please notice on your menu that there's a button that says CC Live Transcript. This is Zoom's closed captioning service, and you can click on it to hide the subtitle or show the subtitle as you choose. You're in control of whether that function is on or off on your screen. Also on your menu is the chat button. For those of us who like to use the chat during the service, which we're welcome to do, please be sure that when you post that you use that little blue drop-down menu to select everyone. If you only chat with the host, what does it say, host and panelists, I am the host and all of the panelists. So I may not be able to see and respond to your message during the service. So let's all give ourselves a big hug of hello and welcome, good morning. I want to especially welcome those of you who are newcomers at Chalice today. Towards the end of the service, I'll put a link in the chat box for adding your name to our email list. Our weekly email is the best way to get information about the many groups and activities we offer, most of which are still meeting online, but there are some dining groups meeting in person. Once you're on our email list, you'll also receive information about our monthly gathering for newcomers. Now, let's take a breath together. We begin our service by acknowledging that wherever each of us is watching, if we are in what is now called the United States, then we are on land that was stolen from indigenous peoples. Our congregational home in what is now called Escondido is on land that is part of the traditional territories of the 12 bands of the Kumeyaay Nation and the 7 bands of the Payamkushim, also called the Luiseno. Land that is sacred to us now was stolen from people for whom that land was and is still sacred. In recognition that we are the beneficiaries of a history of colonialism, we have made financial donations in the past year to 2 local indigenous-led organizations, California Indian Legal Services and the Kumeyaay Diegueño Land Conservancy. It is our hope at Chalice to find our way to right relationship with local tribes. Now we light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice was first used during World War II by the Unitarian Service Committee as a symbol of life-saving refuge for people fleeing persecution in Europe. May our chalice flame burn brightly, that all who are seeking may find us.
On each of the 10 Sundays in the Black Preacher's Sermon Series, we will spotlight a Black composer, songwriter, or other musician who we think you should know about. Today our spotlight shines on Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, not to be confused with the early 19th century British poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who wrote, among other famous works, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Samuel Coleridge-Taylor was a British composer and conductor who lived around the turn of the 20th century. Of mixed-race birth, Samuel's mother Alice Martin was English, and his father Daniel Taylor was from Sierra Leone, a country located on the southwest coast of Africa, which was a British colony during the 19th century and first half of the 20th century. Samuel's father, Daniel, had come to Britain in the 1860s to study medicine, and subsequently qualified as a member of the Royal College of Surgeons. Alice and Daniel were not married, and shortly after Samuel was conceived, Daniel moved back to Africa, not knowing that Alice was pregnant with his son. Samuel never met his father. Alice decided to name her son Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, after the British poet, you guessed it, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, who we're just going to call Samuel from this point forward, joined the Royal College of Music in 1890 on a violin scholarship. He was one of the first black students at the college. He quickly shifted his focus away from the violin and towards composing. As he cultivated his compositional talents, he also became involved with black political and cultural networks in London. In 1896, he met the African-American poet Paul Laurence Dunbar and set some of his poems to music. He also met Frederick J. Loudon, former director of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, the choir that introduced African-American spirituals to British audiences in 1873. In 1900, Samuel was a leading delegate at the first Pan-African Conference in London. He took responsibility for arranging musical entertainments. He was also the youngest signatory of a resolution which called on various heads of state to, quote, acknowledge and protect the rights of people of African descent, unquote. As Coleridge-Taylor came to prominence in Britain, African Americans were suffering from one of the worst periods of political, social, cultural, and economic repression they had experienced since the Civil War. In this context, the success of a black composer across the Atlantic inspired many African Americans. Samuel was an example of what could be possible for black people in the United States. During the composer's first tour to the United States in 1904, he found himself a major celebrity. Samuel was received by President Theodore Roosevelt at the White House, a rare event in those days for a man of African descent. He conducted performances of his music given by the Samuel Coleridge-Taylor Society, which was a 200-voice African-American choir, founded a few years earlier in Washington, D.C. Samuel became the first black man to conduct a white orchestra, and he earned the title the African Mahler from the White Orchestral Musicians of New York. Public schools were named after him in Louisville, Kentucky, and Baltimore, Maryland. Samuel Coleridge-Taylor was a pioneer in classical music. He sought to draw from traditional African music and integrate it into the classical tradition, which he considered Brahms to have done with Hungarian music and Dvorak with Bohemian music. Throughout his life, he was passionate about civil rights for black people everywhere, and the music he wrote became his voice for justice.
Everything is falling apart. Everything is possible. Everything is falling apart, which means that everything is possible. This is the time to dream. This is the time to be reminded of our highest aspirations. Out there is anxiety and fear and ugliness, people being mean to each other. May this be a time of refuge and sanctuary, where we remind ourselves of the best we can be. As the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman wrote, in the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in good times or in tempests, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. May this hour together nourish in us our moments of high resolve, that we may be strengthened in that to which our lives are committed. Let us worship together. You are invited to join in singing. Our Sunday worship is the shared spiritual practice of our community, and we tend to the congregation during this time by sharing and honoring our joys and sorrows. If you'd like to share a joy or sorrow with the congregation this morning, now is the time for sharing in the chat box. If you'd like to send me a confidential note about your joy or sorrow or to make a prayer request, please email me. I'll put my email address in the chat box.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
Our story today is called Hands Up, Celebrating Black Joy Every Day, written by Brianna J. McDaniel and illustrated by Shane W. Evans. In her notes about the book, author Brianna McDaniel writes, "For many people, the phrase hands up brings forward difficult emotions like anger, sadness, frustration, and fear. With this story, I wanted to emphasize the ways I've experienced that phrase as a part of my everyday life, at home, at play, in church, and at protests with young people leading the way." Greet the sun, bold and bright, tiny hands up. Peekaboo, hands up. Morning, baby, time to get dressed, hands up. Stretch high, almost there, hands up. Gotta get clean, reach for the sink, hands up. Come on, little one, dry your tears. Here, hold the bun, hands up. Ready for takeoff, hands up. Please pick me, Miss B, got my hands up. Adventure books live up top. Reach high, tippy toes, hands up. Graceful like Miss Misty, 5th position, hands up. Racing fast, wind whistling, hands up. It's all right, baby girl. I'll help. Hands up. The music flows through us. Amazing grace in praise and worship. Hands up. On the court, fired up, jump ball, hands up. For the win, defense, hands up. On top of the world, trophy to the sky, hands up. We begin small, but we grow big. Together we are mighty. High fives all around. Hands up. As one we say, hands up.
Each year, I pick a topic for us to study deeply over the course of the church year, called our Spirit Study topic. Last year's topic was healing trauma, healing racialized trauma, deeply informed by the work of trauma specialist Resmaa Menakem. When I thought about what would be a good next step for our congregational study and learning, I kept coming back to the repeated advice we've received from people like Menakem, people helping to heal white supremacy in our culture. What we've heard from people like Menakem is the repeated advice to center the voices and experiences of marginalized peoples, for white people to do less talking and more listening. And so I started to think about how great it would be for us to listen to some of our Black UU preachers, especially now that using video has opened us up to being able to hear from people who are outside our local area. So I've invited 10 UU preachers to preach for us over the course of the next 10 months, one service a month, and they are invited to preach on any topic of their choosing. So this morning's preacher, Gregory C. Carrow-Boyd, will be familiar to any of you who have been to our UUA General Assembly the past few years. Over the past 10 years, Greg has served on the GA Planning Committee and then 2 terms on the UUA Board of Trustees. He has been a visible leader during our UUA General Sessions, helping ensure that hundreds of us are able to figure out how to vote on our UUA business. He's a master credentialed religious educator and aspirant for the Unitarian Universalist ministry. He lives and serves in Los Angeles, California, and I'm so thrilled that he said yes to our invitation to preach this morning.
Good morning, Chalice Unitarian Universalist congregation. I am so glad to be with you today. When Reverend Sharon asked me to preach, I was really honored. Escondido is one of my favorite places to visit when I go down to visit folks in San Diego. I'm up here in LA, and I just am so grateful for this time to be worshiping with you and learning more about how we can be what we witness. And so to get us into this, I want to give you a little bit of a reading. This reading is in our gray hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, and it's a quotation that is often attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson. But doing a little bit of internet sleuthing, I discovered that Ralph Waldo Emerson may have said some of it. He actually didn't say most of it, and the vast majority of it is actually attributable to Chaim Stern, who was a 20th century Reformed Jewish rabbi and Jewish theologian. But the combination of this brain trust offers us: a person will worship something. Have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming. This quotation also has some parallels with Jewish Bible's Psalm number 115, specifically verse 8, where they're talking about idolatry of gods. And they say of these gods, those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. I add to this dialogue that we are what we witness. We are what we witness, and as Unitarian Universalists, we believe this even more than some other groups might, because we have a codified social witness process that we use at our annual meeting of Congregations General Assembly. It just happened back in June, will happen again next June. In this process, we have a way of discerning what it is that we want to say to the world about who we are in this moment. How are we seeking to uphold justice in this moment after dialogue with congregations, interested groups, organizations that are outside of Unitarian Universalism? We have a couple different ways that we do this. I'm not going to spend time describing all of them. The one that I really want us to focus on is the statement of conscience. The statement of conscience comes after a 4-year process where we decide through study, through dialogue, through action, whether we can make a statement of our values that has an enduring quality. These statements are serious. We use these statements when we are signing on to amicus briefs with the U.S. Supreme Court. We use them to justify why we take certain actions in the past. We have even used them to get out of having hotels at a certain General Assembly location because we had evidence that breaking a strike line was not in line with our values. Over the years, we have created more than 500 justice statements. They date all the way back to 1961 during our first General Assembly as Unitarian Universalists. They cover a panoply of different types of things. They address how we're going to interact or how we wish the U.S. government to interact with us. They discuss diversity in ministry, everything from racial equity and diversity to gay, lesbian, bisexual, not originally transgender inclusion. We discuss how we're going to support ministries to youth and young adults. And perhaps most frequently, we discuss how we will fund programs that are in line with our values. I want to spend a bunch more time here because elsewhere I have said that our values are simple and easy to understand. And here's what I think are a few of our shared values. These are by no means an exhaustive list, but I think these are a few of the ones that we can agree on. We agree that a value that we share is justice. We believe that our value is in equity. We want people to be treated in a way that is fair. We want people to have resources in a way that is equitable. We believe in compassion, that we should treat people in a way that upholds their humanity. We believe that we need to also uphold consequences when our relationships do not meet the wildest expectations we might have that we have discussed and we have covenanted together. And we believe in the sanctity of all Black life. So when we say justice, this is important because we spend so much time in our processes of justice. Justice is not a simple thing to understand. I enjoy likening justice to capital L love. Reverend Dr. Cornell West has said that justice is what love looks like in public, in the same way that love looks like hugs and cuddles and all of the intimations that we might have in our hearts in private. Justice is what love looks like in public. It's how we announce to the world. It's how we participate in a world that would be more whole. It's how we would expand the experience of belonging, not just of feeling included. To be included in something means that there's a group or groups already there who feel as if they belong. We want to expand the experience of belonging. We also understand justice as a moving target. We can always make more justice. When we go to a place that justice is flowing, where justice is flowing, people will still be hurting, and we'll have to figure out new ways. We'll have to imagine ourselves to new ways of making justice in this world. So let's move on to equity. I already discussed this a little bit, but equity is not equality. I think you all know that. We are not talking about everyone gets the same thing. When we're focusing on equity, we mean that people need and receive the things that they need in order to thrive. Survival is insufficient in an equity framework. Surviving might get you to that next point. It might help us fight the next battle. It might help us identify our resources for going forward. But when we truly understand equity, when we are truly making an equitable framework, we want folks to have the things they need in order to thrive. We want people to have the things they need in order to dream more boldly, to dream in a grander way, to reimagine what the very boundaries of justice might be, what the very boundaries of sharing might be, what the very boundaries of who belongs could be. Another value that I know we share is compassion. Treating people in a way that puts love forward. And again, we talked about one manifestation of love, which is justice, a public-facing version of love. Compassion is not just, I'm going to hold you, you're all right, you're great. It's encouragement to spiritual growth. I'm back. I had to restart the recording. I was telling us that compassion is not just holding ourselves and holding one another and saying, you're great, I'm going to be here with you at all times. Compassion is also about being clear about our boundaries. Compassion is having the courage to engage in clarity even when it might bring out tough emotions. This is not an excuse to be mean or overly candid. There's not necessarily a reason to share everything that's on your mind. But it is important for us to be clear in order to be kind, as Brene Brown says. Compassion is about knowing our own limitations and providing enough space for others to be vulnerable about what their limitations are in order to determine if we can work together for a better future. Compassion is about being open about our own limitations in a way that encourages others to be open about their limitations so that we can have an honest conversation about how we might work for a better world together. And last, and most importantly, a value that I know we share as Unitarian Universalists, is the sanctity of Black life. We understand that our congregations, by and large, look the way that they do, with large proportions of white people as opposed to large proportions of Black, brown, indigenous, and other communities of color in our sanctuaries, because we did a lot of work in the past to keep Black, brown, indigenous, and people of color communities outside of our wildest imaginations for justice. However, our understanding of the beloved community has always centered Black life. It has always centered brown life. It has always centered indigenous life. And we know that our own liberation is tied up in removing the barriers that we have intentionally put in place over centuries by law and by attitude in order to lead to the liberation of all Black peoples. There is no end of racism. There is no end to white supremacy culture or white supremacy thinking that does not begin with the total liberation of all Black people. So let me remind you of the reading. A person will worship something. Have no doubt about that. And I think that when we decide to witness together, we're trying to figure out how we can worship in a way that puts our values of justice, equity, compassion, and the sanctity of Black life into practice. We're trying to find a way that we can move our values forward in the world. And to that end, I think that this year's Statement of Conscience, Undoing Systemic White Supremacy, a call to prophetic action, is perhaps one of the boldest statements we have ever made to that end. It reads in part, seeking universal justice and equity, we call upon the Unitarian Universalist Association and Unitarian Universalist individuals and congregations/groups to actively engage in undoing systemic white supremacy in all of its manifestations. Systemic white supremacy refers to the embedded, institutional, and pervasive nature of racism, white privilege, and racial bias and oppression in our society. We acknowledge the impact of systemic white supremacy is intersectional, meaning it impacts people differently across race, income/class, gender, age, ethnicity, immigration status, sexual orientation, religion, disability, and more. As Unitarian Universalists, we decry the ways in which the intersectional impact of systemic white supremacy divides our human family by privileging some groups over others, and thereby generating resistance to the common goal of universal equity and justice. Systemic white supremacy is a direct affront to every one of our principles. Our reading says, that which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and character. The statement of conscience goes on to clarify some of the things that might dominate our imaginations and our thoughts as we go forward, help us determine our lives by engaging with the movement in our communities and nation to heal the evil of racism. What we agreed to as Unitarian Universalists this past General Assembly is to carry forward the recommended actions conveyed in widening the circle. The report issued by our Commission on Institutional Change after 3 years of study, culminating in the summer of 2020. We are to occupy our imaginations and determine our lives and characters by building relationships across boundaries of privilege and oppression. And we are to fulfill our UU role as a spiritual anchor to Black, Indigenous, and people of color Unitarian Universalists. We can do this. We will do this because a person will worship something. Have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. And out we will come with our values, because our values are clear. Our values are crystal clear. We believe that justice is what love looks like in public. We believe that we are called not only to make justice, but to seek out more people, to expand our understanding of justice, to learn what justice truly is by living into and leaning into uncertainty in these times. Our values will out because we believe in equity, which means we need to find more ways of partnering with groups already invested in so much of the work to undo the evil of racism, so that we know a world where people can truly, freely share their thoughts in a way that allows us to thrive instead of just to survive. Our values will out because of our ability to engage in compassion, which is a way of loving one another into our full selves, so that we know our limitations and our boundaries and are clear on the ways that we can move forward together, if we can at all. And our values will out about the sanctity of Black life. There is no way forward. There is no undoing systemic white supremacy. The only thread to that end runs through the total liberation of all Black peoples. The total liberation of all Black peoples requires us to invest in the spiritual fulfillment of Black peoples. It requires us to invest in the histories of discrimination and oppression and find ways to undo those harms. Some of those are trauma harms that we can never fully undo. Some of those are reparation harms that we can definitely undo. Reparations is more than cash, but cash is a great start. Our values will out themselves because in our statements of conscience, we've written 60 years of justice seeking and justice making that allows us to have a conversation across time with our spiritual forebearers, with the ancestors, with those long forgotten to time who are nonetheless our kindred. Equally as important as what we've written in our more than 500 justice statements are the silences that we've had on the moral issues of the time. Those silences tell us so much about what our spiritual forebears thought was possible in this world and what they have left to us to still make possible. New ways to craft justice. New ways to fulfill wishes, sometimes left unexpressed, other times left ungranted. We have so much to learn about who we might yet be. Therefore, it behooves us. Chaim Stern and perhaps Ralph Waldo Emerson write, therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming. What we witness, we are becoming. And we must become a people so bold to meet the challenges of these times. We do so by fulfilling our promises written over ages and ages. We do so by clearly stating and living into our shared values of justice, equity, compassion, and the sanctity of Black life. And we become what we are witnessing by digging deep into the issues of justice where we have been silent for so long. I know we can. I know we will. And we must become a people so bold. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple of space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of
Good morning, all. I'm Kathy Zapata, one of the 3 co-chairs of your Social Justice and Service team, and I'm here to tell you about our new social justice generosity partner. The Black Community Investment Fund is a new fund of the San Diego Foundation, a charitable organization that was founded 40 years ago and serves a broad spectrum of philanthropic causes in San Diego. The Black Community Investment Fund was co-founded by the Central San Diego Black Chamber of Commerce and the San Diego Foundation. It complements the work of government agencies and organizations by investing in initiatives that disrupt and innovate the institutional drivers of racial inequity in San Diego. The fund issued its first grants in April, awarding $100,000 to expand an existing internship program of the Neighborhood House Association. That grant will provide 80 to 100 Black high school and college students with high-quality, career-oriented, and paid internships. The fund also awarded $100,000 to the San Diego Workforce Partnership for a program that trains Black San Diegans for information, communications, and technology jobs with paid work experience, subsidized training, and job placement. A third $100,000 grant went to a construction career program of the San Diego Workforce Partnership. It is intended to help San Diegans interested in careers in energy, construction, and utilities. That program boasts a great success rate, with more than 90% of participants placed in entry-level positions with local companies. All these programs serve to help build generational wealth for Black San Diegans through education and workforce training. While the fund's initial grants focused on 2 of the fund's 4 defined pillars, that is, education and employment, future grants will also address the other 2 pillars defined by the fund as impacting Black San Diegans' economic prosperity, that is, entrepreneurship and housing. To learn more about the Black Community Investment Fund or to donate directly, check out their website, which Reverend Sharon will add to the chat. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Social Justice and Service team. The other 2 are Susan Llewellyn and Chris O'Connor. The Social Justice and Service team doesn't run the social justice projects that Chalice takes on. Instead, we listen to the inspired proposals and plans that Chalice congregants bring to the table and guide you in making things happen. We would love to hear your ideas for future social justice projects. Please reach out to any one of us for more information about Chalice's Social Justice and Service team. Thank you.
So there are 2 ways to donate. You can make a donation directly to the Black Community Investment Fund. I've put that link in the chat box. And that way you can be on that organization's email list and get news directly from them. Or if you prefer, you can text your donation to Chalice and we will forward the donations as a lump sum from the congregation. So to indicate your donation for this special offering, please text your dollar amount and the word justice, because this is a social justice collection. If you intend for your donation to be your pledge payment, not part of the justice offering, please indicate the word pledge after the dollar amount. I hope you will give generously. Please join in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather to affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. I invite you to practice, experiment with left hand over the heart, acknowledging the individual, right hand in the air, acknowledging our interdependence. These words come from Reverend Marjorie Bowens Wheatley, she of blessed memory, and Reverend Clyde Grubbs. The road of history is long, full of both hope and disappointment. In times past, there have been wars and rumors of wars, violence and exploitation, hunger and homelessness, and destruction of this earth, your creation. We have become a global village with a growing realization of how fragile this earth is and how interconnected we are to each other and to all creation. We cannot continue to live in the old way. We must make a change, see a new way, a way toward peace with justice and a healthy planet. Oh, great creative spirit, you have given a vision of the good, and we yearn for a new way. But where are we to find the courage to begin this work? We know that a different tomorrow is possible, but how can we build it? We think of the prophets, women and men who voiced unpopular opinions, who made personal sacrifices and sometimes lost their lives for the sake of justice. We think of Isaiah, who called out to let those who are held in captivity go free, to give solace to the poor and homeless. Let us be inspired by all who work to overcome misery, poverty, and exploitation. We think of Harriet Tubman, who called out to people of goodwill to join her on an underground railroad, to lift a dehumanized people from the bondage of slavery to the promise of freedom, even when it meant challenging unjust laws. Let us be inspired by those who are outlaws for freedom. We think of Gandhi, whose belief in soul force, the witness to love's truth, helped to overthrow the oppression of an empire and gave witness to the way of nonviolent action. Let us be inspired to become witnesses for peace. We think of Chief Seattle, who reminded us that we belong to the earth, not the earth to us. Let us be inspired by all those who work for the healing of creation of Mother Earth and all her creatures. Who are the prophets who inspire you? They may be well known or known only to you, offering personal inspiration, courage, and hope. May they join a great cloud of witnesses to a new way of life, the way of peace and justice, the way of justice lived according to the way of peace, the beloved community. May it be so. Amen. You're invited to join in singing.
From the height of days remembered, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze,
Our closing words come from Reverend Rebecca Savage. Spirit of life, spirit of love, we have gathered under the banner of a shared faith. We are born of a welcoming grace that extends and receives love. We are touched by the ways we have fallen short of who we strive to be, and we here are reborn, forged by a greater courage. Let us move from this time encouraged and refreshed for the journey ahead. You're invited to close our time together by singing the well, and everyone is invited to coffee hour.